screen now? Okay. Good afternoon, thank you for coming. So my title is Academic Achievement, Religiosity, Spirituality, Health and Environmentalism. Are there any connections? Are there any links? When I was doing some research for a case study about the effects of environmental ethics learning on academic achievement, or rather intelligence, multiple intelligence, I realized that environmental ethics involves many different aspects, as well as morality, an understanding of technologies or the science behind it. And I did some background reading about different religious perspectives on ethics, and it got me interested. And one of the readings I came across is, I highly recommend it for any of you who are doing anything. It's UNEP, Environment, Religion and Culture in the context, in the context of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It was published 2 years ago. It's available online. Download it like I've done. And one of the quotes that I read in it that I really liked was by a former UNDP administrator, and he says, "I used to think that the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science we could address those problems. But I was wrong." I'd like to know where he put the emphasis in that sentence. But I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed and apathy. And to deal with those we need spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. The report goes on to say, it's become more urgent than ever to promote and disseminate morals, values, behaviours and creative solutions. It says more important than ever because it was referring to a comment by Ban Ki-moon, who said protecting our environment is an urgent moral imperative and a sacred duty for all people of faith and people of conscience. I was interested that Ban Ki-moon had made that religious connection, as in sacred. Sorry, can I pause a moment? I've realised I have actually produced a paper, so if you find it hard to read what I asked, during my PhD thesis, I produced a series of 40 lessons for students to promote environmental ethics related to renewable energy technology. And there are certain sections, some of this is missing off the screen, never mind. The first section was an introduction to ethics, then particularly frameworks for normative ethics and moral theories, and an introduction to energy, and then applying the environmental ethics to various renewable energy technologies and arguments for and against them. Can I ask you to turn to page 4 in here? Darryl, do you mind if I just read for a moment from
Yes,
this?
please.
There's not a slide to go with this. But one on page 4, I've got a box that I've copied from my PhD, part of my PhD thesis. In 2013, Berry listed the rise of Judeo-Christian eco-movements in response to White's 1967 paper that put the blame of the environmental degradation down to religious notions of humanity having been granted dominion over nature. In another book here, this is called Ethics in the Environment by Dales Jamieson, he says that White saw Christianity as a proximate rather than ultimate, as an ultimate rather than proximate cause. In his view, science and technology themselves are expressions of the dominant tendencies within Christianity. He says that Christianity is the most anthropocentric religion because the founder of Christianity, Jesus, was God in human form, in their opinion. That gave rise to, or Christianity gave rise in turn to, development of modern science and technology, which has led to the environmental crisis. He refers to science and technology as being progeny of Christianity. Some people would disagree. There's many people who think that science was born probably one that is developed under Islamic thinking and perhaps held back by Catholicism. But he refers to Marxism as being a heresy of Christianity. Doesn't say that that's true in all Christian communities. He said that many of the more traditional small Christian communities might have resisted the uptake of modern technologies in agriculture, and see the human transformation of the earth as a type of sin of pride. Ultimately, his argument is that we need to transform our worldview if we wish to improve the environmental situation. If I can go back to this paper I'm reading from myself today, on page 2, I mentioned that in China, which is possibly well known for having very poor environmental record, sometimes that's been equated with the lack of faith and the lack of religion in times since communism. However, I read in the New York Times last year that recently an increase in religious practices and beliefs within China are becoming a source of energy to fuel environmental action. And likewise, that's been confirmed by a research study by Yang and Huang, that was published earlier this year. I'll just ask you to move back again to page 4 to the insert, and I'll continue reading from there. Donner noticed that the numerous researchers state that many religions throughout the world there is a separation between human activities on Earth and divine operations in the atmosphere. The term act of God is commonly used in connection with weather. Various polls indicate that significant numbers of people believe social and environmental disasters, such as Hurricane Katrina, the Indian Ocean tsunami, or HIV and AIDS, are attributable to acts of God. And there's various citations, quote, referenced there. These opinions tend to make man indirectly responsible through their moral behaviour rather than being directly anthropogenic causes. So it distances us and perhaps means that we have less responsibility to right the environmental wrongs that are being done now. Having said that, White's paper did perhaps spur many religions and religious leaders into developing more environmental movements. And in the lower part of that box, I refer to, for example, the Alliance of Religions and Conservation, and various movements from both Islam and Christian movements, Islamic and Christian movements, that are devoted towards environmental improvement. So, what many people see as a source of light or inspiration can affect our environment, human environment and our natural environment in many, many ways. In my research, I found that by studying ethics. So I looked at the top of this slide, I'm not quite sure why that's not showing, but environmental ethics doesn't just encourage low-level learning, knowledge and understanding and practical application, but more evaluation should be the top one, synthesis and analysis. The use of those, developing those skills and using those skills also showed that there was an increase in the intelligence of the students during and after and maintained after their course. But that was environmental ethics and not religion. In various studies about religion and ethics, religion and learning, for example, James, I think it's James, Jeynes, 2002, compared what he referred to as Bible literacy, probably Bible knowledge, with GPA scores and found positive correlation. This is on page 2 if you're reading the last paragraph. But this does not equate with positive changes in lifestyle, behaviour and decision making. Wood and Hilton, 2012, interviewed 28 African American male graduate level students to elucidate what the students themselves perceived as reasons for accounting for their academic success. 11 of these reported spirituality as the mechanism, and the researchers found 5 interrelated factors: having a confidant to share their problems with, being a source of inspiration, a sense of purpose, resilience or to overcome barriers, and by eliminating distractions. Researching something on spirituality and religiosity, I was quite surprised that when I looked at one paper published in 2018, I found it was identical paragraphs, word for word, from a paper in 2016. So, referring to Zubairu and Sakarau in 2016, which is the original paper that I could find, they listed some of the distractions as being alcohol misuse, premarital sex, while partying. But they also refer to the fact that much of this work on religiosity and academic success has been done on in America and on Christian religiosity rather than other faiths. Looking at Islamic, they didn't necessarily find the same positive correlation. They didn't find any correlation. A study in Africa found the majority of respondents to a non-specific faith questionnaire considered spirituality important. In fact, 3/4 of them said that spirituality helped them focus on their work. An educational leader from India, Mahakul, wrote about the importance of prayer time on school management, citing reasons such as discipline, conviction, moral sensitivity, and stress reduction. So, I think if we're proposing to do a study on the effect of religiosity, we have to be very clear to state that we're looking at one from the perspective of one religion in one culture, or we need to have universal principles. And there are obviously many. I got given this book the other day, and I was just flicking through it because it seemed relevant.
What's the title of the book?
The title of the book is Jesus, Buddha, the Parallel Sayings, edited by Marcus Borg. I'm not sure when it's published. It's Ulysses Press. Published in 2002. So this is a hand-me-down book I got, and picking at random something that seems relatively relevant. Under materialism, Jesus, if you wish to be perfect, go, sell your possessions, give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Buddha said the avaricious do not go to heaven, the foolish do not extol charity. The wise one, however, rejoicing in charity, becomes thereby happy in the beyond. Jesus said, don't store up yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust consume, where thieves break in and steal, but store up your treasures in heaven. Buddha said, let the wise man do righteousness, a treasure that others cannot share, which no thief can steal, a treasure which cannot pass away. And I think we can find lots and lots of common ground in religions and focus on those. And if we are coming from a particular perspective, we need to just mention that. So, Mahakal referred to the importance of prayer time and stress reduction, which brings me to another aspect of this paper, is the effect of spirituality on health. Part of my research, I was looking at all the different factors I could observe in my group of students as they were learning ethics, and I was able to access the medical records, and I compared students who had not done the course previously with students who have been doing the course since 2014, and found that also the BMI values were more healthy in the students who've been learning ethics. Maybe there was a correlation. Maybe through learning ethics they understood themselves better, they were less stressed, they didn't need to eat. Surprisingly, they were less physically active as well, according to the physical education faculty. But it does seem there's a link between spirit, I should say mind, and body, healthy spirit, healthy mind, healthy body. There's a worldwide organisation for alcoholics called Alcoholics Anonymous, who stress that that disease is a spiritual, mental and physical disease. And they have a very high success rate in helping people from not drinking. Williams and Stern in 2007 reviewed literature finding reports of reduced blood pressure, lower stress hormones and blood cholesterol following personal prayer and meditation practices. They also cite Hammer from 1999, American surveys showing that people with greater longevity are people who regularly attended church services or collective worship. But their benefits associated with intrinsic personal beliefs, whereas Shreve Niger, I'm not going to know how to pronounce the name, Edelstein, suggests that extrinsic religious practices led to increased anxiety. Some work by Marjetic from the Croatian Anthropology Journal from 2005 cited reports from Alcott and Ross in 1967, who also made this reference to extrinsic religious practices having a less beneficial effect, and perhaps increased anxiety and possibly more depression and obesity. In their balanced review, though, they refer to both physical and mental health articles tied to religiosity and spirituality. They show that the social support provided through religious networks is also instrumental to well-being. They cite some work that describes findings of positive correlations between intrinsically held religious beliefs and a list of mental health problems, including recovery from depression, reduce suicide rates, intervention strategies for schizophrenia, and addictions that can lead to at-risk behaviour. The report Harris and others in 1995 finds that heart transplant patients who were regular churchgoers reported lower rates of anxiety. I'm on page 5 if you're reading. On the other hand, they also acknowledged the research of Trenholm and others in 1998, who found that strict religious upbringing may have adverse effects on patients with anxiety disorder. So perhaps the important part of religious practice is a concept of prayer is not to influence God, to just go and magically zap and change things, but for us to be transformed by our religious interaction. So hopefully that would, for me, I would like to see people becoming, as I quote at the beginning, less greedy, less materialistic, less apathetic, less selfish, and also the medical benefits would hopefully lead to less anxiety. Perhaps students can learn more effectively. I don't know how much time I've got, but I'd like to just read page 5, because the reason I presented this is that I'd like to hear your thoughts and suggestions about a methodology to do some investigation into this. So from page 5, the complexity and interrelatedness of academic achievement depends on many factors: socioeconomic background, trends or educational levels, fitness and health, sleep, diet, extracurricular activities such as participation in sports, performing music, expression through artistic creativity, are just a few of the factors that could have all positive or detrimental effects on learning. The key to elucidating which factor has the greatest or most significant effect depends on the quality of the research methodology and how any data obtained will be analysed. Quantitative methods can be used to gather academic achievement, record data I should say, from summative assessments of student learning. These can possibly be combined with interim test scores. Interviews and surveys may provide useful insights in some of the studies mentioned in the literature review of this paper. Some questionnaires can also produce quantitative data to indicate relationships in this multifactorial system, which can be analysed by using methods such as ordinary least squares regression or possibly standardised adjusted residuals to identify which parameters show significant differences. When looking at lots and lots of different factors, we can produce a massive chi-squared analysis, but it's difficult. It will just tell them there's an odd result, but not which one. And I was told by Professor Mosley from South Wales University in the UK, who's a statistician, that we can use standardised adjusted residuals to identify which particular cell stands out. So perhaps it would be possible to measure body mass index, blood pressure, blood cholesterol, fitness tests, such as resting pulse recovery rates, would all provide further quantitative data. Environmentally friendly and levels of behaviour and levels of commitment could be indicated through levels of recycling, time devoted to environmental causes, or estimates of personal carbon footprints. Sleep levels and physical activity levels could be monitored using smart devices or mobile apps. Indicators of religiosity may include diary records of time spent in private prayer, meditation or scriptural study. The frequency of communal worship and seminars may indicate more public expression of personal faith rather than intrinsic value. One proposal is to develop a short, scripturally based personal study program for undergraduate students to be invited to follow in their own time. The content would draw their attention to faith-based reasons to commit to both their academic studies and to environmental protection. Measuring their degree of engagement with this personal course and responses to it through diary document analysis, in addition to monitoring health indicators and referencing these against a track of their academic performance, could establish the strength of any relationships. So on this slide, I'm sorry I haven't spent as much time as I should preparing this, so I borrowed some things from the internet. This is talking about spirituality and religion. So perhaps the frequency of prayer and meditation would increase mechanisms through religious coping and through church support, and give people peace and meaning in their lives, and that will impact on their behaviour, their mental health and their physical health. But I think the study should help us find more. Does the religiosity of people impact on their behaviour and lead to improved health? Does improved health then also feed back to changing their behaviour? Does the religious directly affect their health? Is it a psychological, are there psychological factors, and the top line should say social support? So all of these interact, and I think this very much shows one-way action. I think it's probably two-way and more complicated. So going back to Gus Beth's comment, the top environmental problems are selfishness, greed and apathy. I was just walking around Paragon and so much wealth, so much affluence and hedonism. Basically, people just looking for very, very high quality products, high quality food. I was stunned. But really, they're not helping the environmental thing. So, if we are less involved in our personal desires and more seeking our communal well-being, perhaps we can find a solution to environmental problems. So, this says, if the I is replaced with we, even illness becomes wellness. Thank you for listening. I would welcome any questions, suggestions, criticisms, nice ones. Thank you. Nice now.
You may. It depends. Questions? Keep him on his feet.
I can get back up. So if you've got any questions or suggestions as to how to add rigour to this, or whether you think it's relevant.
Very relevant. Then you have a problem?
Well, no, I don't have a problem. I think it's been very well established that people who are religious have a much better health, better attitudes, overall quality of life over those that do not. I think that's well rooted in a lot of different studies over the decades. So that's pretty much a given. Not in every case, but
what are the factors behind this? For example, one could think of some risky and abusive behaviors that may not be undertaken if you're religious. For example, over-drinking, use of drugs, violent activity. Maybe it's against most religions, and the book was interesting.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect, but what about the aspects of spirituality enhancing health? Meditation is valued in most of those religions as well. Is it positive or negative, or this combination?
Meditation's a word that can mean different things in different religions. I mentioned Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is certainly non-faith-based, but it's certainly a spiritual program. The word religious might have been used by early members of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I think that term has changed in its meaning over the years too. Sorry, can you go back to what your question was? Exactly.
So there are positive factors that may affect our health, such as spirituality or religiousness, but also negative things like taking drugs, alcohol,
so you're saying
risky behaviors. So these both would help the hypothesis that religion enhances your life, or spirituality, or you use the term religiosity, which is fine.
By religiosity, I was referring, I think, to the frequency of religious practice as well as the type of religious practice. One thing that I think was interesting was how the religious practice led to improved health was attributed by, I'm trying to find who is it, Zubara Gonzalez, saying Christianity helped people, faith helped people learn more because it gave students a confidant, a source of inspiration, a sense of purpose, resilience, overcoming barriers, and to eliminate distractions. Prayer has been linked to lower blood pressure. Does meditation also link to lower blood pressure? Does regular meditation increase fitness levels, lower rates of diabetes? I think there's many indicators we can look to measure.
So, did you show measure in your research, right? The measure that you mentioned, measurement.
Can you show the measures that you used?
No, I can't.
Can you describe
What I did was I looked at body mass index of students. Is one way, which is a ratio, I guess, of the mass of a student compared to their height, and it's used by the World Health Organization. I mentioned this in my last presentation. Dowell promised me not to repeat what I did last time because we'd have the same people here today. We have some of the same people, and nice to see you again.
But some different people too.
But so I have done a different paper, but that was, I wouldn't say a correlation ship. Put this on.
Oh, it's okay for the. Are you getting?
I'm just going to stand here. That's all.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, but that's really bright. Can you turn it off? Back button. Thank you. I wouldn't say a correlation, but I would say a relationship. So the students who had not done the environmental ethics course had more obesity than the student, and this was, I think, about 40 students had done over the course of 4 years, had done the course, and they had statistically significant less levels of obesity. It could be a coincidence, but the whole analysis was over 8 years at one school. So I can't see there being any other factors, or possibly. The other thing is I was able to access their medical records and see on how many occasions they had attended the medical centre at the school and asked for either physical attention or emotional support. And again, those who had studied the environmental ethics course had subsequently made less visits to the medical room, statistically significant less visits than the students beforehand who had not done the course. So it does seem that there were some links. So if there's some links to learning ethics, they also had improved academic achievement after doing the course compared to students who had not done the course. They also had higher naturalistic intelligence statistically, which is the type of one measure of multiple intelligence. So this is a natural follow-on to look into more depth. Was it learning the ethics overall? Or one aspect of ethics, obviously it's religiosity, religious ethics, virtues, and I suppose some deontology as well, you know, which rules to keep and which not to keep. Does that answer your question? Sorry, I haven't, but then that's why I would like to do a study into, you know, more health measures, and also more academic measures rather than at a different level. So I'd like to do some work with undergraduates.
And also, how often do they do the, how to say, about the meditate or religious or anything that get effect to the academic?
Yeah,
Get the result.
I think that's one of the things that some of the studies refer to as people pray, their blood pressure drops. But what we really want to achieve is a long-term improvement in health, not a snapshot. So I think a longer-term study, at least months, if not years, or if Mr. Alwyn's helping me, maybe it will be decades. No, but if we do a longer term study, then that's more benefit to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Other comments?
My comments is, how about the diversity in the various religious groups? Because I think you have an interest to try and recognize if religiosity is what is a factor that affects your health, then you know that there's also the diversity of the religions that are there. So how do you think you're going to make a plan to try and figure out which religiosity groups would actually?
I don't think I have the resources or the connections to do that. But I do think I need to recognise if I do a study that if there are students from different religions, that I need to, as I say, use principles that are universal and measures that are universal. So I can compare Buddha and Jesus, I can probably compare bits from Islam and Judaism and find universal principles, common approaches, like Christians might pray, Buddhists might meditate. Perhaps I could ask students to record the frequency of those. That I can record how often Buddhists will go to the temple, how often Christians will go to church. Whether I can get them to write down in their diary that they spent church drinking coffee and eating snacks, or in the temple they were sat at the back on their phone with their friend. I don't know. If I can, that would be great. Because that will reveal the depths of their religiosity as well than just a frequency measure.
But I think if I include prayer as a healing factor,
Yeah,
You
okay.
have suggested that prayer seems to be a healing factor in this process of trying to see how it affects people's health. So, do you think other religions have prayer as an integral part of their religious practice? Maybe some religions do not have prayer as a part of their religion. They only have practices, maybe no prayer. Or is there prayer in every religion?
Can I qualify something the studies I was looking at that said prayer improved personal health wasn't saying that prayer caused healing. In the studies I've referred to, it was saying that it maintained or improved health rather than miraculous healing, and it didn't have the same correlation for intercessory prayer for somebody else's health. I should add.
It's very interesting, Alex. I heard a lecture 2 months ago in Los Angeles of a lady a medical doctor, who had been asked some years ago, 25 years ago, to be a medical witness for the Vatican in a case of sainthood. And this got her interested in going to the Vatican Library and researching all the archives of sainthood. In fact, there's hundreds of people have had their applications for sainthood, and they have to have performed a miracle of healing health against when a medical and scientific condition would be generally uncurable, and when there was a clear diagnostic evidence. And if you look at the placement of most of these miracles, it actually has to also depend on having the scientific and diagnostic abilities to verify the miracle. So actually there's very few miracles evidence from Africa because there's very little medical evidence. They don't have CAT scans, they don't have MRIs, they don't have the solid evidence to prove that there was miraculous healing. However, if you go to the industrialized countries, there are a lot because they have all the records to show this cancer was incurable, this record was incurable, and the case. And so that was an interesting case. So the Vatican Library keeps the archives, keeps large files for every application for sainthood, because there's actually an investigation by many investigators go in situ and also call expert witnesses to the Vatican for hearings on sainthood. They usually want, quite long proceedings. And
certainly within some of the Reformed churches, there are also plenty of case studies or examples where people say they have been healed by intercessory prayer.
yes, and then also in other religions as well. And so, but the interesting case for the Vatican study is the Vatican has this established over the last few hundred years a clear procedure, scientific procedure, based on expert testimony and evidence. And so they have thousands of pages for each case, and then you have 1,000 cases, so they have so much evidence of these cases. And a number of cases of miraculous healing meant that people became saints. I mean, hundreds of them. See, and interestingly, this lady doctor, she still was agnostic about this, even though she said there were so many cases of miracles. She actually didn't believe herself. But she was interested in the process and also in the fact that miracles do occur. But what's the explanation for it? But that's the kind of the extreme case, which, as you're referring to, is healing by miracles is an extreme case. What you're talking about is the general enhancement of health by spirituality.
I was, and very much over doing the religious activity of prayer, or the religious activity of being in the posture of prayer, perhaps, or the religious activity of meditating should have, according to much research, should have an impact on health. If there's an impact on health, lower anxiety, are students able to perform better academically because they're sleeping better, they're less anxious? And is there a two-way process? As they perform better, do they gain more self-confidence? Do they therefore feel more healthy as well? And I think if we're doing research into that, we need to measure a whole variety of things in many different ways. We can't do it for all religions, and I don't think that matters, as long as if we're doing some research specifically on Buddhist people, we say that we put the parameters around the case study, define them clearly.
And what about the environmental benefits? Spiritual people, religious people were more environmentally friendly, or in case you may want to recollect your PhD study. So what was the conclusion? It's
my
difficult.
PhD study showed that, yes, I was looking specifically at renewable energy technology rather than sustainability generally. But I looked at health because I want to make sure we sustain good health. There's no point sustaining a random selection of health that needs high input care as well. I found that students did embrace renewable technology in theory. By having studied the ethics, they were able to articulate stronger arguments in favour rather than just the reliability or the scientific theory behind how the technology worked. They were also able to look at the bigger picture of socio-economic factors and political realities and help secondary school students understand that it's not as simple as let's just switch to this new type of energy economy. And yet students were able to suggest ways forwards to encourage greater uptake of renewable energy technology.
Okay. Are there other questions or comments? Any other comments or questions, anyone?
No.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the time.
Important study.